So welcome back here again with Joan. We're together again in the office, so together still for all these years. We don't have a lot to talk about, even though we were here in the heart of the summer, and reading, talking with Joan, seeing comments online. Certainly, this summer has been unlike any others. Of course, there have been a lot of ups and downs, and I think with all the changes that keep happening, it keeps throwing everybody, both vacationers and you homeowners, curveballs on how to adapt to changes that come. And we'll talk about the quarantine change that just came out this week. With that, I think some people have said they've had the best summers ever, yet they can't wait for this summer to be over. So I mean, you get a mixed bag here. That being said, I think what we're looking at the gearing up towards the end of the summer. Some of you may still have the last week or two of August left. You may have Labor Day open, or you may be gearing up for the fall rental. So we are starting to we're seeing those end of August weeks start to book up. If they are open, you do expect to see more and more bookings come in over the next couple weeks. And especially, as we talked about last week, if there's continues to be a delay in the schools, I know the public schools are in the process of voting on whether to go all virtual or stay with a hybrid approach. And they've also been given the option, which many schools are still pending a vote, but I think a lot of them are going to take the up to 10 day delay, which means schools start up to September 16th is when they have to start. I would bet many of them do, which opens up that Labor Day week and even the week after as an opportunity for families to continue to get away. So you should see an uptick during those weeks if you decide to rent past Labor Day. That being said, Joan, what are you seeing for the fall? We talked about it a little bit last week, but what are your recommendations and what are you seeing?
Well, if you are willing to rent in the fall, I know some people will just have had it and just say, okay, that's enough tension and renting for this season. But if you're willing to, and it could be, a chance to make up some of the shortfall from early spring and early June. And so you might just decide to rent. It's harder to rent for a week in the fall if there just isn't as much demand, and of course there's much more supply at every year. So if you're willing to rent for 2-3 nights at a time, might not be a bad idea. Make sure that your nightly price is enough to make it worthwhile for you to do. People are willing to pay more per night for a shorter stay. And you won't fill up your whole month or two, certainly, but it might not be a bad idea to leave some days in between, just to give yourself a breather and allow for some time in between your renters. It's hard to do the turnovers, all summer long, back to back, people out at 10, next one's in at 3 or 4 or 5, and there's a lot of anxiety involved in that, because this summer, more than ever, because of the virus and the need for much more diligence and attention to the cleaning and the sanitizing and disinfecting. So that's one thing you can do, and don't forget to post an owner special, which you can do anytime for free. Just promote your fall availability if you want to try to leverage it by saying, 32-day plus rentals, incur no lodging. There's no lodging tax involved. You could do that if you're willing to take a month's rental, and some people are, some aren't. But you can also keep the minimum stay at 2 or 3 nights, so that you're attracting both kinds of vacationers, those who want to stay for a while, just a couple of nights or a week, and those who might want to come for a longer period of time. So we think it's going to be a lot busier than the normal fall.
And also what we've been hearing is the uptick, similar to what we saw in the spring, is the uptick in those that do want long-term monthly rentals. I think you're going to see that again with many businesses that are continuing to work from home, let their employees work from home. It's another opportunity for those folks this fall to take an extended time away. So we have seen, if again, it's got to be, as Joan mentioned, something that you're interested in letting somebody come and stay at your rental for a long term, for a month or plus. There are the benefits of that. But Joan, what are your recommendations for those considering a long-term rental?
Well, of course, you would be in touch with them if they could come and see your house first. That would be ideal, because what can happen is somebody's going to be there for a month or more. They really should see it. They, sight unseen, you could get a situation where someone comes in, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, or the location or something. So that would be ideal. Plus you would get to meet them. If you can't do that, they're coming from a distance, just do everything you can to vet them and look into, just their history and why are they coming. It's hard to get people out once they're in there. So you certainly, just be careful who you rent to. You want someone who, there's an end game, they might be, renovating their house, or they're a professor on sabbatical or something like that. So, they have an ending in mind rather than just open-ended. And have a good lease. There's, you could do a short-term lease and modify it and make sure you get all the money up front. Or you could, do a long-term lease that requires a bit more as far as, security deposit, keeping it in an escrow account, giving them, paying interest on it. That's actually if there's more than a year's, more common for a year rental. But we do have blog posts about that. So if you're considering a month or more rental and want to talk to us or want to see some blog posts about it, I suggest that before you commit.
And the last topic, just before we throw in, open it up for questions here, is just on the quarantine update. So, or the travel update that dealt with the quarantine. And as we expected, the initial travel update that came out a couple weeks ago, noting which states were low risk and exempt of the quarantine, has changed. We now learned, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, the state of Rhode Island has been added to has been taken off the low risk. So any guests that are coming from Rhode Island are now required to abide by the quarantine or testing in advance. So that obviously throws a wrench into those that have guests from Rhode Island. We haven't heard of any other states, but just that's something that we have to monitor on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, as Governor Baker and their office review those numbers. They will add or remove states from the low risk areas. We were talking about this and what would be the impact, and clearly most people, I would imagine, most people that have booked your home, if they're coming from now a high risk state, these people have hung on to their vacation. This is likely their one vacation that they've taken since this pandemic has started. They're going to try to do everything possible to keep that vacation, in my opinion. And if it means trying to find a place that has a test that is under 72 hours, they're going to try to do that. That's their first line of action. They're going to try to do that. Even as Brian and Caroline, as you were talking about taking more than 72 hours, even if a place ends up taking 4 or 5 days, that's not desirable. They hopefully will know that in advance, but if that's what it takes, and that means they need to quarantine for 2 days at the home, the same thing. I mean, that's what they would have to do. They can still take the test, arrive, quarantine, and wait for the test to come. Again, not ideal. You want to go on vacation with that peace of mind. So most people are going to want to try to find a place where the testing is taking under 72 hours, and hopefully hopefully many of these testing sites are coming down, and clearly it's an issue, but hopefully many of them are coming down in time frame. What else about the quarantine to note?
I've heard that New Jersey has seen an uptick in virus cases, and I think particularly, related to the Jersey Shore and people congregating, which could possibly mean that the governor could add that to the non-exempt states. I hope not, but I was kind of surprised about Rhode Island. So I think, they're watching it carefully, because the last thing they want is to have done so well and to see, a rise in cases here. So
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm seeing the chat here. We've had 2 chats saying a renter from Maryland had no problem getting the test, and then you're off the list. I forget who just said, sorry, from Virginia. Sandy mentioned that from Virginia, it is difficult that they're not going to test non-asymptomatic folks. So, and insurance doesn't cost cover for travel. So I think it really depends on where your guests are coming from, state by state, and even in the state where the testing locations are in terms of getting that test. So it's case by case, but I do believe that most guests are going to try to do whatever it takes to stick with their vacation. If they have to cancel or want to cancel, again, we've talked about how you can go through the steps, and if you're able to, if it's a week upcoming, it's going to be a popular week, you're very likely going to be able to rebook that week very easily. The demand is still really high with low inventory. The other piece on top of that is it's just not, unfortunately, we've also heard from Baker that it's not just these low risk states or other states. Massachusetts too is being monitored, of course, and so we've seen a slight uptick in Massachusetts. And Baker talked about if these numbers don't, if they don't change the direction of the current numbers, that he may need to scale back in some way. And I don't believe he was specific about what that exactly meant, but the focus was scaling back on numbers, really numbers of groups of a certain size and their gatherings. And I believe the number was talking about, indoor gatherings of 25, outdoor gatherings of a certain number. I can't remember what that was. That would be the first thing to scale back. It's really what he's highlighted is where you've seen some of the outbreaks. It's been isolated to these house parties, some on the Cape, some Western Mass, some here probably in the greater Boston area. So, that's the focus if they scale back. I don't think there's going to be something that impacts travel for guests, but again, we'll just have to monitor that. I think that the first step, if Governor Baker scales back, it's going to be scaling back in the group gathering sizes, or stage 3, which was indoor dining and gyms and other indoor activities would be the first thing that comes to mind. So that's something that's what this summer is presenting us with. We'll continue to monitor it. I'm sure you will too, just for everyone's health and safety, and then health and safety of your guests and whether they can continue to come to your rentals. With that, I think what we'll do, as always, is open it up for other questions. I'd like to hear from you, just any questions that you have or any stories that you want to share with the group. Certainly ask questions of the group here too. And I'll do that. Well, unmute folks one at a time here. I have somebody on an iPhone. Don't know. We'll see who you are since it just says iPhone.
Is it me?
It is you.
Okay. Sorry, you can't see me. Okay, I can.
No, I can see you.
I can see you now.
I can see you. Just your name says iPhone. So what is your name?
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's fine. What's your name?
I usually have my iPad. That's why I'm new at this iPhone Zoom.
Sure. What's your name?
Nancy. Okay.
Nancy. All right.
I've had quite a few renters ask me if they can use my bikes. I guess it's because it's one thing they can do where they can socially distance. And in the past, I've just kind of said, okay, yeah, sure. But I was wondering, like, am I liable if they get in an accident with my bicycle? I just kind of worry about that.
Yeah. It would be best if you had an addendum that you could just send them to sign. And Beta, I don't know if you can quickly attach that, but if not, Nancy, just email us and
Yeah.
we will email you an addendum for things like kayaks, canoes, bicycles, that kind of thing that you can have. If anybody wants to use them, you would have them, sign it and send it back. It's
Okay.
indemnifying you from any liability.
I see.
You have helmets too, because these days everybody seems to wear helmets. Maybe you should ask them to provide their own.
Yeah, no, they have to provide their own. Okay.
Yeah, well, if they know
I
how to
bring my
ride a
helmet.
bike, they've got
Yeah,
helmets and
yeah.
they can bring them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Okay,
might
that's
just-
great. I'll do that. Thank you very much.
I might just add on that it doesn't hurt. I mean, we're not insurance people or lawyers. We're always quick to say that. And I would just suggest maybe you check with your insurance agent. Just let them know that they're not just staying in your home, but you're also loaning your bikes.
Okay.
In
All
case they, I don't want you to not be covered if something happens.
Okay.
Joan's right. That addendum is absolutely helpful.
All right,
So
then.
if I were you, I would just check with them too.
All right, great. Okay, that's a good idea. Thank you.
Sure.
The other thing is that their bike rentals are so easily obtainable, rentable.
True. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, while I agree with you, I wonder if that's the case this summer. I
summer.
haven't heard one way or the other.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
But
Okay.
I'm sure
I
they're
have
very
heard
popular.
they're doing a booming business.
Yeah, I'm sure
Oh,
they're,
okay.
yeah, I mean, I know bike sales are booming, so I imagine on rentals, they're also doing pretty well.
At least on the
Okay.
Vineyard, I've heard that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the bike
All right.
paths, I think, are
Busy.
more crowded and busy than normal. Because Nancy, you're right, that's one thing people can do safely. So I think they're encouraging people to wear masks even when they're on the bike path, walking or riding bikes.
How would you feel? How would you feel if you were biking by somebody just as they sneezed?
Can't go back.
No. Nope.
All right, next up, Jan and Ken.
Yeah, I was just going to say that as far as the bikes were concerned this summer, we actually told our renters that we don't want them to use the bikes because the turnover takes long enough, and our cleaning company is certainly not going to disinfect the bikes or the
Right.
beach chairs, any of that stuff. So I've kind of told people they're on their own because the virus has really put a cramp in our style as far as being able to get that stuff up to speed. We didn't have time to do any tune-ups on those bikes.
Yeah.
We just didn't feel comfortable taking them in and exposing ourselves to more people to get the tune-up. So,
Yeah.
and so we know some of them need tires. So we just told everybody that stuff's off limits, and everybody's been very good about it. They seem to understand.
Jan, what about beach chairs? Are you not leaving those for them either?
We do have some beach chairs, but I noticed the last time I went for the turnover on Saturday that some of the plastic stripping that is part of the seat, from side to side, two of the chairs, the stripping is, there's a piece missing. And so they're not in fabulous condition anymore, obviously. And a couple of them have disappeared. Possible that they brought them to the beach and they broke and they just left them at the garbage can. I don't know. I don't ask questions because they're not terribly important. So yeah, I have a reduced number of chairs available. And the ones that are there are not in great shape. So I told people, you know what, you're going to have to count on finding
Bring your own.
And I'm giving people rental information for the bikes, the local bike shops.
Yeah. Well, as long as you tell your renters what to bring, it's perfectly fine. We just need to communicate to them. I've seen some guest reviews where the guest says, oh, the house was so well stocked. If I had known that they had, X, Y, and Z, I wouldn't have brought my own. So it's important to tell them what you don't have and what they need to bring, but also important to tell them what, as you have done, what they need to bring. And
I don't
what you do
advertise
provide.
I don't advertise that we have bikes or beach chairs or.
Yeah.
So, but they do ask sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fine, next.
Oh.
Great, thanks, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've always had this issue with, again, so much is revealed in the guest reviews, and since I'm reading like 50 a day, I see a lot, and there are people who say, well, I didn't know that you didn't have a washer and dryer, and the homeowner will say, well, it's not on my list of amenities, but so many people, so many vacationers assume you have a washer and dryer. So if there's something that is normally, that people might normally expect, don't just say, well, it's not included in my list of amenities. People don't always think to look there. They're making assumptions. So, I always recommend that in the property description, you say what you don't have, or, that we have fans, we don't have air conditioners,
Right,
or
right.
we have, please bring your own linens because we don't supply them. Every year we hear of guests who show up and say, well, I've always had linens provided. I didn't know that they didn't have them.
Right.
So, and then they're scrambling. So
Yeah.
it's really important to disclose what you have, what you don't have, and what they should be bringing.
I
And
agree.
your communications, pre-communications with them as well. Just a reminder.
Yeah, I think if you've done this, if you've rented enough, I think you know what questions your guests have. I don't,
Yeah.
I think the important thing, in my opinion, is making sure your listing is up to speed and up to date. Somebody that booked your home back in January, guess when they're going to want to look at your listing again? It's probably the week before they come, and they're going to do a refresher on what do they have, what do I need to bring. So, I think, when it comes to AC, yeah, you want an AC, do you have fans? If you don't have either, that's something that you don't want to catch them by surprise. So
That's a good point. And I find too that sometimes people have looked at several other houses and they'll forget that, oh yeah, mine's the house that doesn't have AC.
So true.
yeah,
Right.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
it's just.
but I one other thing I wanted to
Sure.
ask about, just to see if anybody else had some input on this. So we had this potential storm coming yesterday and last evening, and I know that in Eastham, it's possible to lose power every once in a while with trees coming down and what have you. So we took some 5-gallon pails and brought them over to our Eastham rental and filled them with water. We told them we were coming and going to do this, and left them out on the deck. So in the event that they would lose power, they could at least flush the toilets.
Mm-hmm.
And after we left there, I was thinking to myself, what else should we have done like that? I mean, of course, they took the umbrellas down that were on the deck. We have a couple of tables with umbrellas. They took those down, and the chairs were pretty secure. But other than that, I was just wondering if other people had some really good ideas along those lines.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Maybe, provide plenty of flashlights, maybe bottled water, or a big thing of drinking water.
Mm-hmm.
I reminded my guests this year the guests who are in the house now, I wrote out a list because, a lot of it is sort of personal to your home.
Yes.
Absolutely, about the cushions and any loose things around. Now I forgot what I was going to just to remind them to charge up all their, just like you would do at home, charge up all your devices.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, if I'd only known, and you sort of forget.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
Thankfully, it was a non-event for most of us. In fact, we didn't get the rain that we so desperately need. So,
right.
At least on the island.
Yeah. Well, when was it last year? I guess it was in July with the tornado. So I was just thinking, wouldn't this be fitting? So not only we have the virus, but a hurricane too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, at least with something like this, you have a little preparation for. The tornado last year was certainly out of the blue. with high winds that could be damaging, you have a little prep for it. So it's a great idea that you are responsive to your guests and showing that you're on top of any emergency situations that may occur. All right.
I think someone's waving. Spencer Kagan is waving.
Yeah. Do you see
Spencer,
the cake?
okay. Hold on. Let me find him.
Spencer, you didn't realize how to raise your hand electronically?
I'll go to Spencer and then go to Patty after that. Spencer, can you find how to unmute?
Yep.
You are. There you are.
I have, thank you for calling. I got just a couple of things in reverse order. Somebody had talked about renting their house or whatever for more than 30 days. An unofficial opinion, you may be creating not a renter agreement under the statute, but a tenancy. And if you do that query, and I don't know the answer, the governor put in no evictions if you don't pay your rent. So if you're gonna rent for more than 30 days, you may want to talk to your attorney to see whether you fall under Baker's edict that if they don't pay the rent for the second month, that you can't evict them. Just a heads up. Second, on bikes, liability on bikes is big time. Somebody can get hurt. Somebody can say, oh, the brakes didn't work or the seat fell off. And the liability is big time. We don't let them use our bikes. We lock them up. So start thinking about liability in this society that we have. You're going to get sued for anything. Cut it back so you're reducing the amount. Two questions that Donna and I have. One is, in our rental agreement, we say no more than, say, 8 people or 10 people. Doesn't make any difference. What do you do if you find out that they exceeded that number by absolute credible evidence?
Well, in your lease, Spencer, don't you have the clause that says no more than 8 people,
Absolutely.
including visitors,
Yep.
permitted,
Yep.
and any violation of this will result in the forfeiture of your security deposit.
And they come back and they say, well, we didn't, but you now have through your neighbors that, hey, there's a lot of parties going on, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. Our neighbors are our best security people.
Sure. Yep.
The question is they say it, and I know you're looking at litigation, because if you say, well, we have credible evidence that you had 10 people, 15 people over what you said, we're going to deduct it, or we're going to take your security deposit, you're going to end up in court. Has anybody had any experience with that? That's my first question.
Yeah, probably. But I don't know how you handle it. I think that there are a lot of people who, it's kind of hard to deny that you had a party until 3 o'clock in the morning.
Not the party, it's the number of people. Who cares about the party?
Well, whether it's a party or whether it's a number of people, it exceeded the limit that's set forth in the rental agreement.
Right. A lot of
I'm just
people just
curious.
add to their agreement, their lease agreement, no loud parties.
So nobody has really had any experience with it.
And as you, well, we can ask the group here. I personally don't, but as you said, people can sue for anything, and that's true. But
Yeah.
I've found that 9 times out of 10, it's an idle threat, and they'll threaten to sue you, but then they never follow through. So,
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way, John, but that's okay. Here's my other question. As we just talked about, Baker put an edict in, if you're from Rhode Island, you can't come in unless you're quarantined for 2 weeks. Renter comes in tonight from Rhode Island, bypasses filling out the form and all that. Are we obligated to say to the renter, you got to leave? And then if the renter stays, and can the renter now say, hey, I'm quarantined for 2 weeks, I'm not moving? Or is it our obligation to say to the renter before they came in, hey, wait a minute, you can't come in.
No,
Gotcha.
I think you're in a tricky spot. I think there was something in the newspaper about this, that lodging establishments, homeowners, you're in a tricky spot. Your only requirement is to inform them of what the requirement is of this quarantine rule or testing
That's
rule.
our
That's your requirement. There's no requirement that you need to report them. Same thing.
Oh, no, I know that. I know we don't have to report them.
You're
But
saying
yes.
if they refuse to leave.
Well, A is our requirement to say, listen, as of today, last night or tomorrow, Baker says you can't come in unless you get a certification that you're testing negative. Is it our obligation to say to that renter, here's what the law is, or we sit back and let the renter figure it out?
You're required to tell them this is what the law is, or this is what the guidance is, but not enforce it.
And you have a lease, you have an end date to the lease. Let's say it's a week from their arrival, right? And you have someone else coming in at the end of that week, hypothetical. And this happened this summer on the Cape with someone. The tenant refused to leave because he was under the impression that he had the rental until Monday. His lease said it was Sunday, and he was refusing to leave. He said, I want to leave on Monday. They had other renters coming in on Sunday. He couldn't stay. So they called it was in Eastham, they called the Eastham police. The police came and said to the renter who was squatting and refusing to leave for a day, you are now trespassing. And if I come back this afternoon and you are not gone, I will issue you a citation and you could be arrested for trespassing. So, that's one way to handle it, and they left.
Okay, anything else, Bill?
And just to be clear, that ruling doesn't take effect until Friday. I know you were talking about if they came in tonight or tomorrow. It's
No,
not.
they're not coming until Sunday.
They're coming in a couple of days. So the first question was, do we have to tell them? And obviously we have to say, listen, here's the problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Second is, once we tell them and they still come in without a certificate, what do we do?
Nothing.
You're not liable.
They're liable to up to a fine of up to $500 a day. We aren't liable for anything, except that our duty is to inform them.
Okay, so it's just our responsibility to let them know this is what Governor Baker came out with.
Yep.
And we are sharing that information with them.
Mhm.
And then it's in their hands however they choose to handle this.
Right.
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 Baker's talking about personal responsibility here for whether it's
Right.
guests coming into the state or the just folks that live in Massachusetts. It's in order
Right.
to control this. This is all measures to control the virus, and people need to be responsible. So in this case, for guests coming from outside, you hopefully the $500 a day fine is something that people realize and take the appropriate measures. And like I
Right.
said, the best case here is to not take that risk and get tested. So you won't know.
We don't have to see the certificate that they tested
No.
negative.
No,
Okay.
they just have to handle that. We're just informing them and giving them the information and they take it from there.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
It is
Okay.
possible that a neighbor, if the guests are being loud or, for any reason, a neighbor might report them that, okay, there's somebody next to me in a neighboring house that has, they have Rhode Island plates, or they have plates from
Right.
another non-exempt state. So, but
Right.
that's, again, it's not your sole responsibility is just to inform them of the law.
Okay.
Yep.
Most people are not.
Okay,
Going
that's
to be, most people are not going to be willing to take that risk. And if they've been there for 4 or 5 days, you're talking, over $2,000 in fines if they do.
right.
Yeah, maybe even per person. So it's
I
just
mean,
not
they
worth the
may
risk.
they may get to the ferry with a Rhode Island plate, and there might be somebody there checking cars to
Right.
make sure they've got something.
Yeah, we
Possible,
don't know
yeah.
what sort of enforcement's going on, but
Right.
that's where it's in the hands of the guests to.
But that's not our responsibility at that point.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna move. Thanks for waiting, Patty. I'm gonna unmute you, and then Kelly, you're up next.
I guess I'm unmuted.
Yep, you are. Hi, Patty.
Hi, Patty.
Hi. Well, one question just about, I have two other little quick things to say. People have asked me this. All of our guests so far are coming from states that are at the moment fine, but who would question them if the neighbor calls the police? Would the police come and question and ask for this information? You don't know.
We
I
We
don't
don't
know.
know. I mean, I suppose if somebody reports them, they might come and question them, but I just don't, I mean, from everything I've read, Governor Baker talks about the honor system. And I think if people are well behaved and, they just don't have the means to be able to be checking people. Somebody,
No, they don't.
a newspaper report I read recently said that a vacationer was flying in, and she came with her certificate about the virus, and she had been tested and had a negative result, and she was all prepared, and she said, nobody stopped me at the airport, as if she was surprised. And they're just not doing that. They're not
That's good. Yeah.
in a position to be able to do it.
Yeah. And for the safety things, if the power goes out, I was just going to say, we do flashlights like you do. We also have a little container of extra batteries. And one of those LL Bean like lanterns that operates on a battery. You'd want to check it every year or so, but just as a backup. But one thing I do, when you were talking about what you provide people and they don't know, I mean, our description's pretty good, but as soon as someone inquires, I send them out this letter. It's probably 2 pages long, and it literally tells everything they need to know about the neighborhood, what we have, even like aluminum foil, plastic bags, baggies, that sort of thing. And that really, I find, helps people. And I highlight in bold letters anything I really want them to know, like no pets kind of thing, and smoking. But it's pretty long, and people say that's really helpful. They tell me over again. I mean, I specify all sorts of things.
I bet they print it out too.
Yeah, they might. One thing I've thought of doing, and I just haven't done, is making a literal list of things that I have that, could be of value to people. But it really is helpful, because they read your listing, but I find they get about halfway through, and then they're so excited to call to try to, book something. That they ask all these questions that were answered. So when I send that, it answers all their questions.
Right. I sometimes will, if I get a booking in, let's say, November for the following July, I'll send them the information about what we have. And then again, about a week or two before they arrive, I also email them and I send the same information. I said, I know I've sent this to you before, but some people are more organized than others, and some will keep it, and others will completely forget. So it's not a bad idea to remind them of what you've already told them.
Right. Well, especially this year, because people have made adjustments to whether they want them to bring pillows or pillow sheets or their own linens. A lot of stuff has changed this year, so reminding them what to bring. I think that would be a valuable list of, if you came up with your own recommendations, here's what we recommend you bring. Give that to people a week before they arrive. That would be very valuable.
I've asked people if they want me to provide pillows or if they're bringing their own. Only one couple brought their own, but we have that bed bug encasement, or that waterproof thing. Then we have another cotton cover, and then the pillowcase. And I actually wash the pillowcase and the cotton cover, not the bed bug waterproof thing every single time. So, but if people want the pillows, and they're, most of them seem to want them. I was surprised. I thought people would bring their own this year, but
you're covering all bases, Patty.
Oh, I cover all bases. I found, in fact, a lot of our stuff, we haven't changed that much because it was the way we did it anyway. So
Sure.
worked out well. Yeah. No. Well, thank you. I enjoy these little seminars.
Thanks for joining again, Patty.
You're welcome.
All right, we're gonna move on here to Kelly. Hi, Kelly.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so my question has to do with the states that are kind of jumping on and off the approved list and the timing. So like this week, Rhode Island was put on the bad list, and I guess that starts on Friday.
Yep.
So what if the renter arrives today or tomorrow? Are they're not
Fine.
required to do any of the due
Nope.
diligence in terms of the testing and all that?
Right,
As long as they arrive prior to the start date?
exactly.
Okay. Okay, I just want a clarification on that. And then I was gonna say, I'm the one that has a Maryland renter in this week, and I sent her all the information from the state, including the link where she had to fill out some paperwork and I guess upload her testing. And then we just communicated via email so that I had something in writing saying that she had gone and done the test and that they were negative. So even though I can't be held liable, I still felt more comfortable having something in writing from her, just saying
Sure.
that,
It's nice to
acknowledging
have,
that
certainly.
they had done the process, and just as an
Sure.
FYI.
Peace of mind for her, too.
Yep. Yeah, peace of mind for everybody, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, they're coming into your house, so it's just.
Right. Imagine if your guests after them asked you, where did your previous guests come from? And you said Maryland. But I do know for a fact that they did get tested. Like, you
Right.
know that for certain, rather than you just saying, I think they did. So, I mean, I think
Yeah,
it's a good
right.
thing to know, peace of mind.
Absolutely.
By the way, I saw the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce came out with a little statement by Wendy Northcross, who's the CEO, this morning, and she was talking about how devastated the hotels and motels were, and the occupancy was, you know, I don't know, 80%. I mean, they had, you know, very low occupancy and a lot of availability. And, you know, it just, and she also mentioned that she understood that the short-term rentals were off the charts and, you know, pretty much fully booked. So there is such a distinction this summer between those who would like to be in a home where they can, you know, have the freedom to move about and just be with their family, and, you know, have a patio or a deck or something all to themselves, and not have to worry about, you know, being in a shared space. And even those, I'm sure, hotels and motels with swimming pools are very popular normally. But again, not so much this summer. So it's been pretty devastating, I think, for a lot of the hotel industry.
Much as I'm sorry for them, and I truly am, these are people who have families and need that that's their livelihood. I'm hoping, I think you agree, that we're hoping that this has kind of converted a lot of folks who traditionally went to those places and now like, wow, I really like that idea of
Right.
staying in a home. So maybe next year we'll get a bump from that.
I would think so.
From those folks.
Yeah, yeah, good point.
Yeah, it continues to just increase the demands and the interest in vacation rentals. There's a lot of, I think we talked about with folks that were canceling vacations. Maybe they generally go overseas or go to Florida or long distance to see family in other states this year. They have to stay local. So this is an opportunity. Do we want to go somewhere local and drive? You know, their options were limited. So the exposure to rentals has been great, and hopefully it will carry on, you know, beyond this pandemic we're in.
Yeah, when we first started our website 22 years ago or so, I think that the number of people who had ever rented a home before was probably quite low. And over the years, it's just accelerated. If we saw a graph, I'm sure that it would be quite dramatic. And we still get people who say, I've never done this before. I've never rented a home, but, and usually it's a very positive experience and they want to do it again, but it's become much more common. And, I think you can attribute a lot of that to just the prevalence of people who, Airbnb and, some of the big box sites, but it's our experience that people are becoming much more accustomed to renting out a whole house and really enjoying it and the many benefits of it.
We also often hear their preference to, and maybe it's because they're on our site to start with, but their preference for dealing directly with a homeowner rather than having it also automated and having a middle person and having to pay on the big box site. So again, there is a market for those who don't care about that as much and don't mind about paying more and being automated. But a lot of people say, I've heard so many vacationers who say, I so prefer dealing directly with a homeowner who knows their home and knows the area and making that connection. Like we always talk about it, right? Are making a connection with our guests. But I really think the guests feel the same thing we do. I think they prefer, a lot of them anyway, prefer knowing who we are and wanting to know what our story is about our home and why we're renting and so forth.
Yeah.
And it's worth reiterating because of that, because of the connections that you are able to make and hopefully are establishing, and especially this year when you're doing whatever you can to make your home inviting and safe, is to get those guest reviews, to work hard this summer as your guests leave to get a few extra guest reviews. You're not going to get every single guest to write one, but if you set your sight on getting, rather than 2 or 3 this summer, if you get 4 or 5 this summer, that would be just excellent, and just really promote your listing, position your listing well for future years. People want to see recent reviews, and if you're doing all this extra work this summer, make sure you get some benefit back by getting some of those reviews, and generally vacationers are glad to give something back. No more questions at the moment. Feel free to raise your hand. I did see one today on the Facebook community page about garbage. I think we talked about this before, but I think everyone is experiencing an increase in garbage. So the once a week, the once a week pickup doesn't always work, and you might have, if your pickup is on a Wednesday and your tenants come in, they may be left with a lot of trash. So I think it's worth checking in somehow, or at least if you have a garbage company, see what it might take to have multiple pickups, if that would help. But certainly there have been some issues, whether they be animals or just garbage overflowing in general. I think guests are using the home more, takeout, just producing a whole lot more.
We have trash pickup twice a week and recycling once a week. But I was talking to someone in Plymouth who said she can't find a trash collection company that does it twice a week there. I had mentioned Nauset Disposal, which has moved into Plymouth area, but they only do it once a week. So maybe if the demand were there, they would do it twice a week. No.
Any other? Here we go. Bill, unmute you here. Hi, Bill.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly express my gratitude, appreciation for this concept works so well. I think it's large. It's the primary reason that I, having done this for many years, have such an easy time. That first of all, the hands-on, the interaction with you guys is really appreciated, and what it does is it engenders this interface with the tenants, and therefore that, you know, that personal back and forth and the communication. One of the things that struck me was, well, you know, I mean, when I started in the spring, I was very anxious about this whole thing, and I have file folders full of COVID stuff, you know, and regulations and what to do. And I was also worried. I have a cleaning service, but I also go in and do my own personal touch, and I was worried about, you know, having to wear a hazmat suit and, you know, getting sick and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And, but one of the things, interesting things I've discovered is that I've always been reluctant to kind of, you know, push it with tenants in terms of, you know, I'm always very generous as far as coming late, leaving early. I'm on the island and said this ferry boats and stuff, but I've been really amazed at how easy it is to kind of turn the screws on my tenants. In other words, you know, I say, okay, I usually offer linens and towels because I have 2 linen closets stocked full of them. And the one thing I hate is having to deal with that, because those that use, you know, the place ends up a mess and I have to go in and blah, blah, blah. So this year I just shut that down. And it is just so wonderful going in there on Saturday and seeing my linen closet, you know, the same way I left it. And then I have check-in at 5 and check out at 9. Which is another luxury I hadn't anticipated, where I have the whole day now to kind of, you know,
Yeah.
and sometimes I'm tempted to call them at 3 and say, well, you know, you can come. But, you know, part of that is the airing out and all of that stuff. But it's going to be interesting going forward, now that I've been spoiled by, you know, 2020, whether I'm ever going to go back to being Mr. Nice Guy again.
Uh-huh.
So it's been really a great education this year. And again, a big part of my success is you guys, so thanks.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Bill. I agree with you that we may not go back totally to the old. We may be approaching the new normal where there's more time in between guests and more people are asking their guests to bring their own linens. It really does make it a whole lot easier for us homeowners. But, you know, again, case by case basis. But I think that it's just really difficult to deal with I think the linens and that constant turnover. I know, Beta, you've often talked about that, and I know you're there during the turnover, just like Bill is, and it can be really harried. And then you have the guest who's saying, you know, well, my ferry gets in at noon, so can I come earlier? And can I drop stuff off? And, you know,
and plus it's 90 degrees and you're making beds, and very challenging.
Yeah, ultimately you got to do what's right for yourself and right for your turnover. And just because you might not provide linens or you might extend the turnover time doesn't mean you can't be attentive to other needs and ensuring that they have a great stay. You can communicate freely with them, establish a good relationship with your guests before their arrival and upon their arrival. So there's a lot of things that you can do just to ensure that they have a great stay, even if it means you've set these new normals up for your own good. I think people will respect that and understand that it's for everyone's best interest.
I loved a way that my husband put it once, just that there are many different ways to think of this, but the concept of letting somebody in your home early. And my family was like, well, why do you have to let them in early? It's, you know, the check-in time isn't until 3 or 4, whatever it is. And my husband said it well. He said it's currency. He gets it. It's any little thing that we do for our guests, whether it's providing linens and some amenity or letting them in an hour early or let them stay an hour late. If we can do it, if it doesn't impact us too much or doesn't impact our next guest too much, it is a currency that it enables us to, it buys goodwill from them, whether it's for a guest review or to have them overlook some problem that ends up happening that's beyond our control. Just anytime we can do some little thing like that, just think of it as, well, that might balance the scales a little bit for the fact that I don't provide linens or, you know, some other thing.
Right. I agree.
Can I just mention something, Jim?
Yeah, of course.
I just wrote on the chat last week, a number of people were talking about providing a landline and some other safety measures. And I just entered the link to a blog post as a thank you all for mentioning that. It was something that we hadn't addressed in our homeowner blog. We're always looking for ideas like that. So if you hadn't seen it, I just added the link on the chat for you all to see.
Great, and they'll see it in the upcoming newsletter as well.
Right.
Yeah. Mention a problem and Beta will write a post about it.
We'll be all over it.
All right, I think we have time for one more. Thank you, Bill, chiming in. And Nancy, you're up here. There you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I really stretched it a little bit this year and worked on the kindness and generosity of our guests and asked them if I provided black trash bags in each bedroom, would they be kind enough to take my linens off the beds and put them in the black trash bags? That way I'm not handling freshly slept on linens. No one minded, and everyone really seemed to understand the sensibility of it. I think we can ask more of people than we realize because they want things to work.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's a great idea.
How do
It was one of the recommendations from, I think it was the CDC.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
To do that, to take the soiled linens and put them in a trash bag. So great, Nancy, that was very smart.
Yep.
It seems pretty easy for a guest. Strip the
Yeah.
bed, put it in a bag, and
Yeah.
put the bag by the door, and you walk out. You go.
Yep. You're not asking them to launder
Again,
them.
you don't do that at a hotel. It's a difference between the hotel and a rental. But again, that's a different industry. I think it's expected that you either come with your own sheets, or if their sheets are provided, it's a simple little thing to do.
And when they hear that you're making them do those little things, they know that you get it, that you're worried about their safety as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. I think, without any other hands up here for now, and we're running out of our time, we certainly seem never to not have something to talk about.
We always worry that, what are we going to talk about? And then here it is, an hour later.
Yes. So I think we will call it a meeting for today, and we'll watch to see if there's any other news or updates worth reporting. You'll certainly hear from us or through our blog and so forth. And I'm not sure we yet to determine the next date for our meeting. It may not be next week. We'll communicate that in advance next week. Anything else?
I don't think so. Enjoy the beautiful weather.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Stay safe.
See you next time. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.